Welcome to the CURES digital show where we explore the cutting edge of wellness. I'm Kara Sundlin. So what do the stars say about 2023? And what really happens when Mercury is in retrograde, as it is at this taping right now? So joining us now is internationally known astrologist and happiness coach, Carrie Samuels. Welcome, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Kara. It's wonderful to be here.
You know, I think Mercury in retrograde has actually become somewhat mainstream. I now see USA Today reporting it. I've seen it in newspapers. We joke about it here in the newsroom that when things aren't working properly or we're reporting all these flights being grounded, that, oh, it must be Mercury in retrograde. And in fact, it is right now, as we've just experienced all these crazy flight delays. But what exactly does it mean when Mercury is in retrograde?
So Mercury is the planet that rules communication and transportation, actually, and also commerce. So retrograde means that it appears to be moving backwards. A planet can never move backwards, but from the Earth's perspective, which is where we live, it looks like it's moving backwards. So when the planet of communication and transportation is in this retrograde, appearing to be moving backwards motion, things associated with it also can appear to be moving backwards or going haywire. But what's important to remember about this is that this is actually to help us fix these things. So when all these things go haywire, when Mercury is retrograde, it's because we're meant to take a step back and correct course. So that's the gift in it, is that all the flights being delayed and all that, we're supposed to look and see what went wrong.
So a lot of people get worried, you know, they hear Mercury in retrograde and go, oh no, everything's going to be horrible. And you actually say that that's not how we should be handling it from an astrologist perspective.
Yeah, and from a nature perspective, when people were observing the planets back in ancient times, when they were looking at planets, they didn't have internet, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have phones to distract them. So they were looking up at the stars. And astrology was created to help us be in tune with the cycles of nature and the cycles of the universe. So we're not anymore. So that's when things go haywire, is because we're meant to take a step back and slow down. And that's what the Mercury retrograde cycle is about taking a step back, slowing down, and re-examine our communication, re-examine our transportation, re-examine how we connect with each other. And we're forced to do it during Mercury retrograde because things go wrong. But things don't have to go wrong if we do this intentionally.
Okay. So Mercury in retrograde, it's happening now. We're coming out of it soon, right? Did you tell me January 18th?
Yes, you have an amazing memory. So we've actually been in this cycle for the entire of 2023 so far. It started on December 29th of 2022, and it's a 3-week-ish cycle, usually a little longer. That happens around every 4 months. And so we begin this year with Mercury retrograde, and we actually end the year with Mercury retrograde. But so far, all of 2023 has been in this cycle. And I think we all feel that as well.
So basically, when it's happening, the rules of thumb are we need to leave room for flexibility. We need to slow down. We need to catch our breath.
Yes. All the RE words are applicable during any retrograde. Actually, every single planet is going retrograde this year at some point. Actually, we just came out of Mars retrograde, which actually may have caused more chaos than Mercury retrograde. It just happens less often, so it's not as infamous. But all the RE words, review, revise, repair, are 3 big ones. So that's why things break down during Mercury retrograde. It's not like it's random. It's not like communication breaks down arbitrarily or appliances break arbitrarily. We were meant to look at them, but so much in life, we're like, I'll look at this later. I'll get to it later. I'll get to that pile of papers later. I'll get to fix that later. And so during these retrograde times, we have to. We're forced to. But if we do these things proactively, if we say, let's leave this space in our calendar, I always mark Mercury retrograde on my calendar. So if I'm doing a product launch or anything like that, I usually don't during that time. I use that time to fix things on my website, to re-record something, or to go through those piles of paper that build up. So if you do that proactively, if you mark it on your calendar ahead of time, which I suggest people do, then you won't be taken by surprise by the trickster energy of Mercury retrograde.
Okay. So, for those who are doubters or say, oh, you have to believe or whatever, I mean, you like to make the mystic more mainstream so that we can understand this, okay? So I'm wondering, I remember doing a report about Walt Disney. He never opened a park without consulting an astrologist. He wanted the dates to be correct for opening. There's one of the famous investors. Oh gosh, I think it's I'll think of it. Was it Rockefeller or was it JP Morgan? I'm sorry. So one of the famous investors, JP Morgan, said, I remember doing this report, that millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. Yet in modern times, we kind of tend to look at it like maybe the younger generation. I think all the social media, it says what your sun sign is. People are it's coming back. But for those who are just like not paying attention, how does astrology work for mainstream people? Why should we look at this?
Well, I actually think you don't even need to believe in astrology to take 3 weeks every 4 months to do that, because it's really good. Everything in nature helps us be in tune with rhythms and cycles. So astrology is like weather forecasting. It's telling you these are the cycles of nature. So the ancients used to study astrology with astronomy and all of their arts and all of their sciences, because it's really about getting in tune with nature. And in the modern world, we tend to live as if every day is a Monday in summer. We are not in tune with any cycles. We just live every day, just going. And it's not good for us. Even trees rest, even everything is in a cycle of nature. So astrology, it's misinterpreted as this fortune telling. I don't believe in fortune telling. Astrology forecasts are like weather forecasts. And so to me, it's like, would you plan a summer beach vacation in winter in Minnesota? Right? But that's what people essentially do without looking at the cycles of nature, or looking at astrology, which is this thousands-year-old tool that people have been using to be in touch with cycles and rhythms. So you're missing out if you're just trying to plan something without looking at what cycle we're in. So this is literally like weather forecasting, except it's not weather that is about storms. It's more celestial storms and
more energies
days.
And what's going on. So
yeah,
right. And I think, on a scientific perspective, people say, well, if the tides are affected by the planets, if the animals are affected by the planets, if the plants are affected by the planets, why wouldn't humans at some level? So I think it makes sense to look at this, certainly wherever your belief is. But I think it's interesting you brought up the history. It's true. I was reading about 400 years ago, if you were lucky enough to go to college, which meant you were probably a wealthy man, you would have had to study astrology. It was part of getting a degree.
That's right. And I also studied the sister science numerology, which the modern numerology, which is also thousands of years old, was Pythagoras. He had a mystery school, like the Pythagorean theorem. Like all the ancient scientists and philosophers, they studied astrology because it's like studying natural sciences. And you mentioned the moon and our tides. The moon, because it's hard to think, okay, so these are millions of miles away. How do they affect us? How do planets affect us? The moon governs our tides, right? we are made of 60% water. And the iron in our blood is literally from an exploded star. So we are made of stardust. And they've recently done a scientific study that proves that Jupiter and Venus is the planet closest to Earth, and Jupiter is the largest planet, affects our climate. This is a scientific study. We're in a solar system. The sun is literally the source of all our life. And so it's millions of miles away, but we're in this system where we all have this gravitational pull. So again, planets don't do things to us. They don't make us do things, but we're connected. And we feel disconnected because we lost touch with our natural rhythms and with this attunement to nature and our cycles. And so again, you don't need to believe in astrology. And trust me, astrology will happen whether you believe in it or not. This Mercury retrograde is going to happen to you whether you believe in it or not, if you're not paying attention to what is these energies are trying to show you. So this is about communication and transportation. The world has shown us that this definitely happened, right? All the flights being delayed and all the communication. But what happened with that is we had to say what went wrong.
Yeah. And so I love that you want to make this practical of what we would do with this information. So we often hear that when Mercury is in retrograde, we should not sign any contracts or make any large purchases. Is that also true?
Yes. And the reason being is that Mercury is the planet that governs our mind. Mercury, all the planets are named after mythological god, the gods that they believed in at the time, because they each represented a certain quality, a certain aspect of human life. And Mercury's communication and transportation, it's how you think. Your communication is how you connect with other people. That's why it's also associated with transportation. And so during these times, so in our life, we're picking up information all the time. Lots of information that we don't process. And so during these retrograde times of Mercury, which is 20% of the year, it's an 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, Mercury's whizzing along in this seemingly, it's always in a forward motion, but 20% of the time, it's this retreating, this going back. So you don't sign a contract because your mind is going to be picking up on pieces of information that you had previously overlooked.
Okay, so it's a time to review, as you said. So, I mean, if you have to sign something, if you have to do it, then what?
Well, again, nothing needs to be a superstitious endeavor, right? So if you have to do it, you want to make sure you're checking all the facts. You're researching. Research is another R-E word. You're researching. You're reviewing everything in detail so you know that you're thorough, that you haven't missed anything, that you looked at everything that you need to look at. So if you need to have surgery, things do break down too, and so you need to buy something else. But make sure that you do your research first. Make sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. And that way, sometimes if you do something during Mercury retrograde, you'll have to go back and do it again later because you may have missed something, and that's okay. Again, nothing's about being superstitious, and nothing is about, oh no, I'm cursed. The universe loves you. The universe loves you.
Yeah.
So this is all to help you do the best you can.
So let's switch into this year. 2023, you're also a numerologist. So what can you tell us about 2023?
Well, it's sort of a retrograde year. Like the whole year is about tuning in and more than tuning in, it's about expressing who you are more authentically. I looked at every aspect of the astrology and numerology of the year, plus my own art of interpreting things. And there's a lot in it that's about healing and mental health as well. Especially there's our planet Saturn, which rules structures, is going into Pisces for 3 years. When Saturn went into Aquarius in 2020, that's when we had, do you remember what happened March of 2020? Was when Saturn
Let's
went
not
into
have that
Aquarius.
again. Let's not have that again.
Yeah.
Is it in a better place now,
there.
Carrie?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Saturn's about restrictions and Aquarius is our society. So we saw all these restrictions in our society when Saturn went into Aquarius. Saturn's moving into Pisces for 3 years, starting in March. And actually, there's a lot. Saturn's moving into Pisces and Pluto is moving into Aquarius. They're passing the baton, and that's going to be a 20-year cycle. But Saturn moving into Pisces is all about compassion and healing and connectedness. And that's why we're beginning to see more people being more honest about who they are and their mental health, because this is a time of healing. We've been through a lot of collective trauma for 3 years.
Yeah.
And it's brought up things that need to be healed. But in this healing process, we feel more comfortable being who we are. And so we talk about numerology. 2023 in numerology is a 7 universal year. And 7 is about being in touch with your soul, your life purpose, your calling, what you're here to do. It's also very introspective. And every planet's retrograde this year, which is an every other year kind of thing. So Venus is going retrograde, Mars, these personal planets that aren't always retrograde. This is a time of going within, asking, what do I really want to do and express in the world, and doing it in a very authentic way. And that is your key to success.
Okay. All right. So, people, I think, have been through it, right? We've all gone through this collective trauma.
Yes.
And in some ways it might have made people, we had the Great Resignation, we have people reevaluating what's important to them. But I think people want to hear that, okay, good. Is the energy right to start new things or to start to feel lighter? Or I read somewhere, it might have been your forecast, that we're actually officially moving into the quote unquote Age of Aquarius. Talk about that. Do we have things to look forward to?
Oh, yeah, we have a lot to look forward to. This is the first year since 2020. I do a forecast every year where I look at this. And when I did my 2020 forecast, and this is recorded, I was like, I don't know if I'll ever leave my house in 2020. And I barely did. And I said, we're not, I don't think we're going to be flying internationally. And there was a lot in our astrology that showed all about restriction. And the past 3 years, every time I do the forecast, I've felt anxious. But this year, I feel so much joy about what's ahead, because I really feel that so much of what's been happening, what we've been through, has taught us, again, like the Great Resignation, what we will no longer tolerate, what's no longer right for our soul. And that 7-year and the Pisces and Saturn, and also because Pluto moves into Aquarius, which is all about connectedness in society, but also being an individual. It's how the individual helps the greater good. And so I feel that all of this has culminated into this year where, if we have the courage to be ourselves, if we have the courage to be authentic, that's why I say mental health is a big part of it, because it's not about being the Instagram version of ourselves. It's about being the true version of ourselves, like all of it, the parts that we've been afraid to express. And when you are living and expressing those parts of yourself that you've been afraid to express, that's when good things happen to you. That's when you live your soul's purpose. So I think all of this collective trauma has been about helping us say, you know what, I can't anymore. I have to be myself. I have no other choice. And so everything in our astrology right now and our numerology is saying, please have the courage to show the people closest to you and the world who you are and go for your dreams. So Pisces is the sign of dreams, and we're moving into Saturn, which is build structure. So this is literally 3 years where it's like, go build your dreams, and go for what you want and believe in yourself, have courage. That's a big theme this year. And this is why I feel so excited about what the energies this year. That is your weather forecast. Be yourself. That's what the stars and the planets and the numbers are saying. And again, you don't need to believe in astrology or numerology to do this. but I feel like we're all feeling this.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people are hoping and being more optimistic of just excited to do other things and maybe feeling on a practical level, like I want to travel or I want to see friends again or some definition of what really matters to them. And we're certainly talking about in the business world as well as, so whatever the stars are saying, we're also talking about this in a practical way. And I love that that's part of what you do is give practical guidance. So in a number 7 year, what is practical guidance?
Well, the thing about a 7 year is it always involves some type of retreat or tuning into yourself. So practically, you want to make sure, and I know that there's a lot of moms and parents out there that say, I can't take time to myself, but you're actually going to have to take time to yourself because that's how you catch up with yourself. And this is a year because everything's retrograde, and retrograde is always about catching up with yourself. The 7 year, everything in the year is saying you need to take time to yourself, by yourself, and catch up with yourself. So does that mean journaling? Does that mean meditating? These are all good things to do, even if you do them just a little bit every day. It's really important. And so that's how you connect with the parts of yourself that you've maybe overlooked or ignored. And that's where you're going to get those wonderful, what I like to call divine downloads, where you receive inspiration. Like J.K. Rowling was sitting on a train when Harry Potter just came to her. It's when you're in those moments of quiet and space, when you're in that zone, the right brain zone, the intuitive zone, when you're creative, when you're allowing yourself to just be, that's actually essential for you to do more. And again, I know our society isn't really cool with that, but that's actually your key to success, is to make sure you're taking that time to yourself to receive the parts of your intuitive brain that are trying to connect with you.
Yeah, and I think we're sometimes, though, when people might struggle with, okay, I got this idea, but then life gets in the way to actually doing something or changing something. Or so for those of the people out there who do have a dream and are listening to you and saying, this is great, I'm gonna act on it this year, I'm gonna go within and follow my dream. Practically, how do you advise people to get there? Because they're living their regular lives, right? That are busy.
Yeah, well, practically with everything that you're wanting to build, it's one step at a time. And this, again, is what Saturn teaches us. It's about discipline. So it's about having boundaries with your time, and things that are important to you, you need to be very focused with. So if you realize that you have something in your life that is an energy drain, or that is taking up your time, or you're spending too much time with, even if you just do 5 minutes a day where you do something for yourself, start the blog, figure out how to use a webcam, or figure out how to upload something, or figure out how to get on a dating site. And it's about building your courage muscles little by little. Little steps lead to big changes, but there's always magic on the other side of fear. So if you just do little things to overcome your fear, step by step, pretty soon your courage muscles will be so strong and things will be second nature for you. And when you believe in yourself, that is when opportunities abound for you. That is when opportunities happen for you. So I do live in Portland, where we have Nike, so just do it is our motto here.
Yeah.
Right? So
I like that too. I say that to my kids all the time. You like Nike, just do it. It's usually about cleaning their room, but
yeah, so start before you feel ready. So you don't ever feel ready.
Right.
So do the things that you're saying, I'll do next year, or I'll do in 6 months. Do it now, but do it small and build step by step.
Step by step. And I know you're helping people with that. You have a lot of practical programs on your website, CarySamuels.com. You put out a whole forecast if people want to learn more about this for 2023, the numerology, the astrology. Let me just ask you this. Most of us, whether you believe in astrology or not, like, you know your sun sign, right? I'm a Cancer. I do a show with someone who's an Aries. We joke about that. How much does it really matter, our sun signs? We know that. Or is it like really our whole chart?
Well, the sun signs can help a lot. I actually love numerology because it's, in a way, easier to learn than astrology too. If you learn these 9 numbers, you'll start to see them show up everywhere, like on license plates. But the sun signs are very helpful. The whole chart, of course, if you can. I think people get into astrology when they get their chart done and they're blown away with how accurate it is, because you can see everything about your childhood and why things are challenging for you. It's pretty remarkable. But the sun sign is like knowing if you're going to adopt a dog, you look up the breed and say, okay, this dog likes to chew, or this dog needs exercise. In a way, the sun sign is like that. It shows you your nature and what you need to express yourself. And even just something as simple as that can be so helpful in understanding each other. Like if you are a Cancer, we know that you're squishy and tender on the inside, that family is important to you, and we've certainly seen that in your life, right?
Right, and that we love water. We've got to have water.
And you got to have water. And it's Cancers can be protective on the outside. They're very protective. And Cancer is actually ruled by the moon. So you would actually be more connected to them, which is probably why you're like, hey, let's have an astrologer on.
Well, we joke about Mercury in retrograde all the time on Great Day Connecticut, and my co-host who laughs like, oh, come on, is Mercury in retrograde? I'm like, in fact, it is. But I'm really, I know we're out of time for this, but I want to let everyone know they can go to CarySamuels.com. They can also follow you on Instagram, which is at Cary Samuels also. And you are all the time taking the mystical and making it practical. So we appreciate your time. And I know that Mercury is going to go direct in a couple of days, so I'm grateful that the Zoom worked, everything was fine, and we can take a moment and review this over the next couple of weeks. So thanks, Cary.
All right, thanks so much for having me. It's been a joy.
Absolutely. And thanks for joining us for Kara's Cures on the cutting edge of wellness. You can find more inspiration that inspires on my Facebook. Go to @Kara Sundlin. You can follow me there or join the Kara's Cures Facebook group also on Facebook. Have a great day, everyone, and be well.